But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَبَشِّرَ الصَّابِرِينَ, that give glad tidings to those that are patient. It is important that for us as Muslims, that we take a step back when we fall into some sort of calamity. When we find ourselves addressing or dealing with some sort of adversity, it is vital for the Muslim to take a step back and to center themselves. And center themselves by equipping themselves with the faith and resilience that is required in order to continue living with compassion, in order to continue living with our faith, and to overcome any sort of temptation to give up, to overcome any sort of temptation to stop trying, to overcome any sort of temptation to stop living altogether. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describing the response, the appropriate response to this, is that He says, الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ, that those that when they are afflicted with an adversity, when a suffering visits them, when a difficulty visits them, what do? قَالُوا إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. They say, certainly we belong to Allah and to Him we are bound to return. Meaning, we are acknowledging when difficulties happens, when something small or something large happens, we acknowledge when we say this, that nothing can happen to us except through the will and the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that there is no way to overcome an obstacle in our life except through the will of Rabbul Alameen subhanahu wa ta'ala. So while we may not be able to control our circumstances, we may not be able to control the things that happen to us. We may not be able to control those things that are occurring to us. What we can control is a narrative that we tell ourselves. We can control the narrative that we tell ourselves, the way that we console ourselves, the story that we play in our own heads, in trying to deal with that situation, in trying to justify, in trying to resolve the difficulties that we go through on a day-to-day basis. This is a reality. And this is an unfortunate reality that it is a reality across the globe, but especially in the United States. Statistics, these are all statistics that have been taken from the CDC, from CDC sources, from official sources. If anyone wishes, I can provide them to them as well. The CDC suggests that a few years ago, the complete statistics were from 2 years ago. From 2 years ago, adults that seriously considered suicide because of their depression in the United States, that number was well over 14 million on a yearly basis. Remember, adults, how many adults are there in the United States? There's about 240 million adults. So if 13 to 14 million of them are considering and they are pondering and contemplating suicide, that is a massive percentage. That is a very large number, even though it may seem small, but it's a very large number of individuals. On average, the CDC suggests that there's about 140 people that attempt suicide on a daily basis. In Pennsylvania, within the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, that number is about 30 people. Meaning, out of the 140 across the nation, 30 of them are within our state, the state that we are living in today as well. That they're not just contemplating anymore. Now they've gone past that and that they are attempting suicide as well. Let's go down to the statistics regarding children. 10% of children, that is once again a massive number. 10% of children between the ages of 3 and 17 have had thoughts of depression before. This was in 2019. The most recent survey that was taken in 2022, that number suggests that percentage has gone from 10 to 30%. There has been a 20% increase within the pandemic and post-pandemic years and post-pandemic time, where children between the ages of 3 and 17, so quite a large sample size, but still, that these are children that have had thoughts about depression. And out of this, 4 to 7% of them have attempted or have thought about attempting to end their lives as well. So the adversity, difficulties with dealing with the problems that are coming our way, suffering through afflictions, all of those, this is a reality. The beauty of our deen is, and this is the point I want to hit home today. The beauty of our deen is, our deen does not sweep these things under the rug. Our deen does not say you ignore them, you hush, you don't talk about them. Our deen tells us through the teachings of Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam on how to deal with them, how to address them. And the first and foremost, the very fundamental dealing that we have to do when it comes to mental health issues, when it comes to issues of depression and suicide, the very first thing, the very fundamental thing is to unequivocally understand that it is not antithetical to religiosity to experience sadness and grief. It does not go against being religious or pious if a person goes through stages of grief, that person goes through stages of depression, that person goes through stages of struggles with their own mental health. It is not that. And the proof of this is in the Quran as well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us examples of this. Let's take 3 examples for ourselves. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is describing the situation regarding Maryam alayhi salam, the mother of Isa alayhi salam, a woman that has been described by Allah, not by you and I, not by the people around her, by Allah, as someone that was a religious person, someone that was a pious person, someone that was very close to her Lord. This is an individual when she is suffering through difficulties, when she is suffering through hardship. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala immortalizes one of her statements. She says, قالت يا ليتني مت قبل هذا وكنت نسيا منسيا. Oh, I wish I would have died before this. I would have been something gone, forgotten. Maryam alayhi salam is not an unreligious person. She is not an unpious person by any means, by any standards. In fact, she is, through the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says she is the best woman of her time. Out of the 4 women that have been named to be the leader of the women in this world, the name of Maryam alayhi salam is within those 4 names as well. So the fact that she is feeling this way, the fact that she is going through this stage of grief, it is not go against her religiosity by any means. Another example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the feelings of Yaqub alayhi salam. Now we're dealing with a prophet of Allah. Now we're talking about a prophet of Allah. When Yaqub alayhi salam, he says, قَالَ يَا أَسَفَا عَلَى يُوسُفَ. That, oh, how sad I am about Yusuf alayhi salam. Oh, how sad I am about Yusuf alayhi salam. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes, it says, وَبْيَضَّتْ عَيْنَاهُ مِنَ الْحُزْنِ. And his eyes had become white. His eyes had become white. He had lost his sight due to the sorrow, due to the crying, due to the grief that he was suffering. وَفَهُوَ قَضِيمٌ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, even then, he was still suppressing some of his grief. Even then, he was still suppressing some of his anger at that time. Once again, Yaqub alayhi salam is not, no one can make the claim that Yaqub alayhi salam was an irreligious person or an unpious person. Yet, look at the feeling that he is having. Look at the motions of grief that he himself is going through. A third example is the third example is of the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as well, and that tells us how to deal with it. When we suffer through loss, when we suffer through adversity, the first and foremost we understand that Islam does not say that this is against, now suddenly you are no longer a religious person, you are suddenly no longer someone that is close with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Get that? Let's throw that out of the window. That is an un-Islamic idea to begin with. But what Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam teach her, on the other hand, is that the Prophet they teach us that when we affirm this, when we affirm the difficulty, we acknowledge the hardship, the grief that we are going through, it can help a person process the trauma, it can help a person deal with the pain, and it can help a person, and it can allow a person to begin the process of healing and begin the process of recovering from there as well. Once again, all Quran and all Sunnah over here. I'm not pulling stuff out of the psychological surveys or anything. Straight from our deen, straight from the core source of our deen. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when he loses his son Ibrahim radiyallahu ta'ala an. Remember, Ibrahim radiyallahu ta'ala an is not an infant when he passes away. According to most narrations, Ibrahim radiyallahu ta'ala an, the son of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, is a few years old at this time. He's not a few months old. He's a few years old. And those that have children, you know how dear small children are. Yeah, in the middle stage, they get a little bit difficult to deal with. But that small moment, when they're very, very young, how dear they are. Everything that they do, something bad that they do, you laugh. Something good that they do, they laugh. They do something that would be unacceptable in society. It makes us happy. There's a special bond that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed, a special love that Allah azza wa jal has placed within our hearts, especially the hearts of the parents for their children. So when Ibrahim radiyallahu ta'ala an passes away, at that time Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam is seen crying. This is his grief. This is his grief. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam then makes a statement, and he acknowledges it. He affirms what is it that's happening at that moment. And when he says, إِنَّ الْعَيْنَ تَدْمَعْ, that the eye weeps. وَالْقَلْبَ يَحْزُنْ, and the heart grieves. وَلَا نَقُولُ إِلَّا مَا يَرْضَى رَبُّنَا. The first part of the statement is the Prophet ﷺ acknowledging the grief that he is suffering at that moment. And the second part of that statement is the Prophet ﷺ affirming it and now telling us how is it that we should approach these sorts of situations. When he says, لَا نَقُولُ إِلَّا مَا يَرْضَى رَبُّنَا, but we won't say anything except that which pleases our Lord. And then once again, the human side, the grief side of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when he says, وَإِنَّا بِفِرَاقِكَ يَا إِبْرَاهِيمُ لَمَحْزُونُونَ, and we are at your separation, O Ibrahim, we are grieved, we are hurting. So Islam does not tell us to push it, to sweep it under the rug. Islam does not say that becoming grieved, becoming depressed, going through the stages or the difficult stages or problems of mental health, that does not mean that a person is no longer religious. It does not mean that a person is no longer a good Muslim. What that means is this is a human thing that happens. It happened to Anbiya alayhimus salatu wassalam. It happened to the most religious individuals throughout history has happened to. Well, Islam tells us how is it that we deal with them. The first step that Islam tells us, as we learn from this story of Ibrahim radiallahu ta'ala and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, is that you affirm the grief, you affirm the difficulty, you affirm it, and then that helps you, and you associate it back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That puts things into perspective. It puts things into perspective. It reminds us of where it is that we came from and where it is that we are going. The second is a reminder to all of us that we are not just simple cogs in the system. Rather, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has dignified us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has dignified us in a way that He has not dignified any other being from before us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says it unequivocally, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ, that we have honored the son of Adam. We have honored the progeny of Adam. وَحَمَلْنَاهُمْ فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ, and we have some of the ways that we have honored them is that we have given them the ability, give them rides to ride and to go across the land and the sea. وَرَزَقْنَاهُمْ مِنَ الطَّيِّبَاتِ, we have given them a variety of good things that they can consume from. وَفَضَّلْنَاهُمْ عَلَى كَثِيرٍ مِمَّا خَلَقْنَا تَفْضِيلًا, and we have given them a superiority, we have given them an edge, we have given them a preference over the rest of all that we have created. Telling us that we are telling ourselves over here, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that the dignity of human beings is very evident from this ayah. And it is even more evident when we go back to the beginning of the human story. We are not just pieces. We are not just bags of flesh, as many may have us think. We are honored. No matter if the world honors us or not, no matter if the world cares about us or not, remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala began the human story, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honored mankind and humankind at that moment as well. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the perfect creation, the angels that do not disobey, لا يعصون ما أمرهم الله, they do not disobey that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded them to do. When He tells them to do what? Prostrate in front of this human, Adam alayhi salam. When that time Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is honoring, وَإِذْ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ اسْجُدُوا لِآدَمَ, and when we commanded the malaika, the angels, bow down and prostrate in front of or to Adam alayhi salam, out of respect for him. Let that sink in for a second. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded the most perfect beings that do not disobey the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to prostrate to our kind, to our father Adam alayhi salam. There must be a reason for that. There must be a purpose for us. We have been created, you and I, we have been created with a purpose and for a purpose. Our struggle is not random. Our suffering is not random. Everything has a purpose. Every story has a place, and every being has a role to play within it. Every day that you and I, what is it that we are doing? We are writing our stories. So while we may not be able to control the circumstances that we are dealt with, the cards that are put in our hands, what we can do is what is it that we do with those? What is it that how we look at them? What is our narrative when we deal with those difficulties and those adversities and those hardships that go throughout our day-to-day lives? So to summarize, number one, the very first thing is to get this idea out of our minds and out of our heads that if a person is going through grief, depression, and suffering, when they're having those thoughts, this does not mean that the person is irreligious. Maryam alayhi salam had those thoughts. Yaqub alayhi salam went through those motions. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam went through those motions himself. Those were the most religious of beings throughout the entire creation. So if they're going through grief, if they're going through these moments of difficulty, of hardship, then who are we to say that that depression is something that is it is contrasting to religiosity? The second thing to understand is that when we look at these sort of difficulties, is that we remind ourselves that we are not simple cogs in the system. Doesn't matter if the world recognizes us or not. Doesn't matter if our family recognizes us or not. Doesn't matter if anyone recognizes us. Allah already recognized us when He said, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is associating our creation to Him. When He is saying, we, Allah, honored Banu Adam, the children of Adam alayhi salatu wassalam. And then what are some practical ways? What are some practical ways? And I'll end it off with this. There's many different ways that have been mentioned by the ulama and such. Is now first and foremost is to learn the du'as of grief, learn the du'as of depression that we've learned from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These moments, there were moments in the life of the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam where he went through severe difficulty. And you can see in the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as well. Look at those moments. Read the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and look at how Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam dealt with those moments of difficulty and those moments of hardship. The second thing is understand our worldview. Understand our worldview, understand our take on regarding calamities and regarding difficulties and how it is that we view these things. Remember to remind ourselves we're not simple cogs in this system. Number 3 is to surround ourselves with good company. People that are helping us, people that are uplifting us, people that do not throw us down, they're not leading us to think that just because we're having these thoughts, we're having these moments of difficulty, they're having these thoughts, even suicidal thoughts, that we are no longer considered to be religious individuals anymore. Get rid of those individuals from our lives. That's the third thing. And the fourth, and I would say this is one of the most important things, and you can see there's a trend here as well, is minimize the use of social media. Minimize the use of social media. I would urge parents. I'm saying this because next week probably school is going to be out, so the kids will be here. But right now, I'm telling this to the parents as well. That even if your kids are not too happy about this, put restrictions on the internet usage in your homes. Ban certain websites, completely block them off. If you need help on how to do that, we can help you in doing that as well. There's certain applications that our children have on their phones that we may think that they're very innocent. They're just, what is it? Oh, they're just, moving around. They're maybe dancing here and there. But wallahi, I swear by Allah, the damage that they are doing, not just to their iman, but to their mental health, but to their social standing it's unimaginable. It's unimaginable. Within the pandemic years, when the use of social media rose, the rate of depression amongst children between the ages of 10 and 17, these are young adults budding a new life, it jumped 20%. 20%. That is not a small number. That is not something for us to just to look over. And the last thing is there is nothing wrong with seeking proper professional Muslim counseling help as well. There are Muslim counselors that can help a person deal with these difficulties, deal with the depression, deal with suicidal thoughts that a person that they may be going through. Let's remove the stigma out of there. It is better for them to have gone and seen someone that is a specialist, and a Muslim specialist that can guide them through this. Then we wake up one morning and we are confronted with the worst news that a person can ever be confronted with. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us, protect all of our children, protect all of our families. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
الحمد لله الذي خلق فسوى وقدر فهدى سبحانه هو أمات وأحيا وأضحك وأبكى أنزل علينا الكتاب والفرقان وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله الداعي إلى الله على بصيرة هو ومن اتبعه بلغ الرسالة وأدى الأمانة ونصح الأمة وجاهد في الله حق جهاده حتى أتاه اليقين فصلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن سار على طريقهم إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد فأوصيكم يا أيها الناس ونفسي بتقوى الله سبحانه وتعالى فإن فيها العز بعد الذل والأمن بعد الخوف والنجاة يوم الورود. قال الله تعالى ولنبلونكم بشيء من الخوف والجوع ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات وبشر الصابرين. وقال الله تعالى الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. فعن عبد الله بن عباس رضي الله تعالى عنه أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كان يقول عند الكرب لا إله إلا الله الحليم الكريم سبحان الله رب العرش العظيم سبحان الله رب السماوات السبع ورب العرش الكريم. أسأل الله تعالى بمنه وكرمه أن يذهب همومنا وغمومنا وأحزاننا وأحزانكم وأن يحيينا حياة طيبة إنه سميع الدعاء. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل وسلم على سائر الأنبياء والمرسلين. اتقوا الله عباد الله وعظموا شعائر الله ومن يعظم شعائر الله فإنها من تقوى القلوب. أيها المسلم اعمل لدنياك بقدر بقائك فيها واعمل لآخرتك بقدر بقائك فيها وأكثر من الصلاة والسلام على أفضل الأنبياء والمرسلين نبيكم وقدوتكم محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم فقد أمركم الله تعالى بذلك فقال جل وعلا إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على عبدك ورسولك نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وتابعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وعنا معهم بمنك وكرمك يا أكرم الأكرمين. اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين اللهم أصلح أحوال المسلمين في كل مكان اللهم اجعل ديارهم ديار أمن وأمان يا ذا الجلال والإكرام. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين يا ربنا يا ربنا يا ربنا. أقم الصلاة. As we're getting up for Salah, there's a lot of gaps in the middle. There's a lot of gaps in the front. So please fill in those gaps. Fill in those gaps so that the brothers that are in the hallways and they're in the doorways, they can be able to pray inside. So please fill in the gaps, stand shoulder to shoulder.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Hayya ala salah, hayya ala salah, hayya ala falah, hayya ala falah. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
Please make sure the lines are straight, your cell phones are on silent, all gaps are filled up. Make sure the saf in front of you is complete to be full before starting another saf. And double check to make sure that your cell phones are indeed on silent. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. ألم تر كيف فعل ربك بأصحاب الفيل ألم يجعل كيدهم في تضليل وأرسل عليهم طيرا أبابيل ترميهم بحجارة من سجيل فجعلهم كعصف مأكول. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفر إنه كان توابا. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. استغفر الله استغفر الله استغفر الله استغفر الله. Assalamu alaikum. Just a couple quick announcements. As you know, Zubaydah Foundation supports about 300 plus families on a monthly basis, so become part of the good that is being done. The next monthly pantry packing is going to occur on June 10th. That is Saturday, June 10th. Inshallah, for those that would like to become part of that, you can donate financially, you can donate pantry items, you can also donate your time by volunteering. I know many high school and college students, mostly high school students, are looking for volunteer hours. So this is a great opportunity for you to earn those volunteer hours and to obviously, with the right intention, get a lot of reward doing that as well. So become part of the good that is being done. Secondly, inshallah, the registration for summer camp is still open. And you know, the summer camp is going to be for boys and girls between the ages of 6 and 11. Now, if someone is, you know, like a little over 11, that's okay as well. Or someone is a little bit younger than 6, that is okay as well, so long as, you know, they're able to stay within the masjid for 4 or 5 hours at a time without needing their mommy. So if that's, please register your children as soon as you can. Once we do reach capacity, we are not going to be able to accept any more students. So please register your children for that. There is a nominal fee that is attached to it as well, but we have a policy that we do not turn anyone away due to financial circumstances. So everyone is going to be allowed to have their children come in regardless of their financial status. So once again, there's a lot of things happening over the summer. Keep up with our social media, keep up with the the WhatsApp group, as well as the flyers on the monitors in the hallways, and just join everything that is happening throughout the summer as well. Jazakumullah khair.